Let's kick things off with a question that seems almost too simple to ask. How do we understand sentences? How does our brain take a string of sounds or symbols and turn it into meaning? Well, it turns out the answer has a surprising amount in common with a box of Legos. I mean, really think about that for a second. Every single day, you hear sentences you have never, ever encountered in your life. It's not like you have a giant dictionary in your head with every possible sentence memorized. And yet, you get it instantly. This isn't magic. It's actually a core feature of human language that linguists call productivity, and it's one of the most incredible things our brains can do. For instance, I'm going to go out on a limb and say you've never heard this exact sentence before. A philosophical platypus bought a spaceship to impress a cat. But you didn't even flinch. Your brain didn't short circuit. You know exactly what that means. You can picture the whole weird scene, right? The pensive platypus, the shiny spaceship, maybe even a very unimpressed-looking cat. So, how? What's the secret? Well, it lies in a really elegant idea.
We're calling it the Lego principle, which I think is a great way to picture it. But in the worlds of linguistics and philosophy, it has a more official name. The core idea is that we construct meaning piece by piece, block by block, just like you would build a castle or a car out of Legos. And here's that official name, the principle of compositionality. All it says is that the meaning of a whole sentence comes from just two things. First, the meaning of its individual parts, the words themselves. And second, the rules you use to combine them, basically the grammar or syntax. The words are your Lego bricks, and the grammar is your instruction manual.
Let's see it in action. Say you've got 3 bricks: dog, bites, and mailman. You already know what each of those words means on its own. The instruction manual of English grammar then tells you how to snap them together in a nice, standard subject, verb, object order. And voila, you get the dog bites the mailman. A complete, meaningful thought. Simple enough, right? But here's where the instruction manual, the structure, becomes absolutely critical. What happens if we use the exact same bricks but just snap them together in a different order? You swap the subject and the object, and the dog bites the mailman suddenly becomes the mailman bites the dog. Whoa, that's a very different scenario. This proves that meaning isn't just in the words themselves, it's baked right into the structure. This amazing property, by the way, is what linguists call systematicity. Okay, so this Lego principle is looking pretty good. Words are bricks, grammar is the instructions. But of course, language is never that simple, is it? It's slippery. What happens when the bricks themselves seem to change their shape and color depending on where you put them? To handle this slipperiness, linguists talk about 2 different kinds of meaning. First, there's a word's standing meaning. You can think of this as its basic, off-the-shelf dictionary definition. But then there's its occasion meaning, what the word means in a specific context, right here, right now. It's kind of like the difference between a standard Lego brick and a special, custom one you've modified just for this one particular build. The philosopher John Searle gave this fantastic example. Take a simple word like cut. Seems straightforward. But as he points out, what you're actually doing when you're cutting the grass is a totally different physical action from what you're doing when you're cutting a cake. And this is a perfect illustration. The occasion meaning of the word cut is being shaped and molded by the other words around it, its linguistic neighbors. The verb brick is the same, but the grass brick and the cake brick force it to take on a totally different meaning. So far, this doesn't totally break our Lego rule. It just means some bricks can influence the shape of the bricks right next to them. Our rule is holding up, a little bent maybe, but not broken. But this, of course, leads to an even deeper question. What if it's not the other words that are changing the meaning, but the actual physical world outside of the sentence, the situation you're in? Let's stick with Searle's example for a second. Imagine you walk into a hardware store, point to a lawnmower, and say, "I need something to cut the grass." Everybody knows you mean mowing your lawn. But now, imagine you're at a landscaping company that sells those big rolls of sod. If you say, "We need to cut the grass," you probably mean slicing up a big strip of turf with a utility knife. The words are identical, the sentence is identical, but the real-world context, what's sometimes called the extra-linguistic situation, has completely changed the meaning. All right, so we've seen that the Lego principle can stretch and bend to handle context. But now we get to the really fun part. There are some sentences out there that seem to just, well, snap the principle clean in half. These are the famous puzzles in philosophy that have kept thinkers busy for a very, very long time. Okay, here's a little logic puzzle for you. We all agree that eye doctor and ophthalmologist are synonyms. They mean the exact same thing. They refer to the same job. So they should be perfectly interchangeable Lego bricks, right? Like 2 identical 2x4 red bricks. You should be able to swap one for the other with no problem. So
With that in mind, are the next two sentences we're about to see identical in meaning? Let's say we have our friend Carla, and Carla believes eye doctors are rich. We'll say that's true. That is a belief she holds. But Carla, like a lot of us, has never actually heard the fancy word ophthalmologist. So she doesn't have any beliefs about them, which means the sentence, Carla believes ophthalmologists are rich, has to be false. Wait a second, hold on. We only swapped one word for its direct synonym. How can one sentence be true and the other be false if they're built from the same structure and bricks with the same meaning?
This is a massive problem for a simple, straightforward version of compositionality. That basic rule we talked about, that you can swap one identical brick for another without changing the final product, it seems to have failed completely. And this kind of puzzle tends to pop up specifically with sentences about our mental states, like believing or wanting or knowing. These sentences seem to care not just about what a word refers to, but about the specific way we think about it. So what does this mean? Is the whole Lego principle just wrong? Should we just throw it in the bin? Well, not so fast. The fact that the principle runs into these fascinating, tricky puzzles doesn't actually mean it's useless. In fact, it's the opposite. It becomes an incredibly powerful tool for discovery. I think the best way to see compositionality isn't as some rigid, ironclad law of the universe. It's much more like a powerful working hypothesis. It's the starting point. It's the default assumption. And when we find a sentence that seems to break the rule, like our eye doctor puzzle, that's like a big flashing sign that tells us, hey, look over here. Something way more complex and interesting is going on underneath the hood of language and thought. All right, so let's tie this all together. What are the big takeaways? First, the Lego principle. We build meaning from words and structure. Second, context is absolutely king. The meaning of our Lego bricks can shift and change based on the other bricks around them and even the world around the entire creation. Third, these unsolved puzzles, especially around things like beliefs, aren't failures. They're what pushes our understanding forward. And finally, all of this whole debate, it gives us an incredible window into the deep, complex, and fascinating connection between our language, our meaning, and our minds, which, in the end, leaves us with one last massive question to chew on. If the full meaning of what we say isn't just in the words, and it's not just in the grammar, but it's also shaped by our situation and by our own personal beliefs, then where exactly is meaning? Is it in our heads? Is it something that exists between people? Or is it somewhere else entirely? That is a puzzle for another day.